Mr. Jordan Harris arrived at the airport early in the morning, carrying only a small black bag and a calm smile. He liked traveling without stress, and he always respected the staff who worked long hours to help passengers. Today, he had a confirmed first-class ticket for an important business trip. He walked confidently to the gate, ready to board the plane like any normal traveler. But as soon as he reached the counter, he noticed something strange. The gate agent kept looking at his ticket, then at him, then back at the ticket again. Her smile slowly faded into a confused expression. Jordan politely asked if everything was okay. The agent cleared her throat and said softly, "Sir, there seems to be a problem with your seat." Jordan stayed calm. What kind of problem? Before she could answer, a man standing next to them stepped forward. He was dressed in a gray suit and looked impatient. He pointed at Jordan's ticket and said, "That's my seat. I already upgraded." Maybe he picked up the wrong boarding pass. The agent tried to explain, but the man kept speaking as if Jordan wasn't even there. He glanced at Jordan from head to toe with a quick judgmental look, assuming he could not possibly be a first-class passenger. Jordan did not react. He had seen this kind of assumption before, people deciding who he was without knowing anything about him. "I'm sure this is a misunderstanding," Jordan said calmly. The agent checked the system again but still looked stressed. She then asked Jordan to step aside for a moment. "Sir, please wait. We will fix this soon." Jordan nodded politely and stepped to the side. Other passengers watched the situation with silent curiosity. Some looked confused, some uncomfortable, but no one said anything. Jordan stood quietly holding his bag, not wanting to cause any scene. He believed kindness and patience always work better than anger. After a few minutes, the same businessman walked confidently into the first-class line and boarded without any issue. He didn't even look back. Jordan simply took a slow breath. He did not blame anyone. He only hoped the matter would be resolved soon. A second agent approached him and said, "Sir, we're trying to find your seat. It may take some time. For now, could you please sit in the front row of economy until we sort this out?" Jordan did not argue. He understood that mistakes happen and systems are not perfect. "Sure," he replied. "I'll wait." He walked inside the plane and sat in the economy row. The seat was narrow and his long legs barely fit, but he still placed his bag under the seat and smiled politely at the person next to him. The other passengers did not know who he was, and Jordan did not feel the need to tell them. He lived his life with quiet dignity. As he sat there, the businessman who took his seat placed his bag in the first-class overhead compartment and settled comfortably. He even glanced back at Jordan for a moment, then shrugged and looked away. Jordan simply focused on the window, watching airport workers load luggage into the cargo bay. His mind stayed peaceful, even though he felt a small sadness in his heart, not because he lost his seat, but because people judged him too quickly. The flight attendants looked at Jordan with sympathy. One of them whispered, "I'm sorry for the mix-up, sir. We're trying our best." Jordan smiled softly. "Thank you for your help. I appreciate it." His calm attitude surprised the attendant. Most passengers would have been upset or loud, but Jordan's voice carried warmth. He never believed anger solved anything. Instead, he believed respect opened doors that anger only closed. As the boarding continued, a few passengers kept glancing at him. Some wondered why someone so well-dressed was sitting in the economy row. Others thought he looked familiar, maybe from a business article or an interview they once read, but no one could place him exactly. Jordan noticed their curious looks but didn't mind. He simply folded his hands and waited. The plane door finally closed, and the captain began speaking over the speakers. His tone sounded hurried, almost impatient. Jordan raised an eyebrow. He had traveled many times, and he could always sense when something about a flight felt unusual. Today, he sensed that something was not quite right. Still, he remained silent. He looked at the crew moving around quickly. He noticed the pilot walking in and out with a slightly annoyed expression, as if he was not fully focused. Jordan's eyes narrowed slightly. He had a deep understanding of aviation, far more than any passenger would guess. But he did not reveal anything yet. He simply whispered to himself, "Patience. Everything will show in time." And while the flight attendants hurried through their final checks and the pilot rushed to the cockpit, Jordan quietly observed, waiting for the moment he knew was coming. The plane was now fully boarded, and the flight attendants moved down the aisle giving final instructions. Most passengers were settling into their seats, adjusting seatbelts, and preparing for a long morning flight. But Mr. Jordan Harris sat quietly in his cramped economy seat, noticing every small detail around him. Jordan had always been observant. It was a habit built over many years of experience in the aviation world. Most people saw airplanes as simple machines that carried them from one place to another. But Jordan understood their design, their structure, their behavior, almost like a doctor understands a heartbeat. As he looked out the window, something unusual caught his eye. Near the left wing, one of the maintenance staff members walked past with a worried expression. The staff member touched the metal surface gently, then stepped back and made a small hand signal to another worker. Jordan leaned forward a little, narrowing his eyes. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but he knew that body language like that usually meant something needed attention. Inside the cabin, however, everything looked normal. The man in the gray suit up in first class had already removed his shoes and was stretching, enjoying the extra space that should have belonged to Jordan. He lifted his glass of juice and scrolled through his phone with a relaxed smile. He had no idea of the bigger picture forming around him. The flight crew continued their work, but Jordan noticed small hints of confusion. One attendant whispered to another, pointing toward the cockpit. The second attendant nodded uncertainly. Jordan could tell they were not sure about something, but they didn't want to alarm the passengers. Many times, the crew handled issues quietly to avoid panic. He respected that. Suddenly, a light beep echoed from the speakers. The engines had not started yet. Usually by this time, the pilot would have announced takeoff preparations. But today, everything was strangely quiet. Jordan closed his eyes for a moment, listening carefully. There was a tension in the air, a kind of silent pause that only experienced travelers could sense. The plane felt ready, but not completely safe. A trained eye would notice. Jordan's trained eyes certainly did. A few minutes later, the captain's voice came over the speaker system. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a short delay. Please remain seated. We will update you shortly." The tone felt rushed and slightly irritated, not calm and professional. Jordan opened his eyes again. He didn't want to assume anything, but he had learned long ago that leadership tone often reveals the state of readiness. He took a slow breath and looked out the window once more. The maintenance worker had returned, now speaking quickly with another staff member. They glanced at the wing and then at the cockpit window. Jordan followed their eyes and noticed the cockpit blinds shift slightly, as if someone inside was looking out. The man next to Jordan leaned over and whispered, "Do you think something's wrong?" Jordan offered a small smile. "Maybe something needs checking. It happens sometimes, but you look like you know more," the man said softly. Jordan didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "It's better to make sure everything is safe before a flight. A few minutes delay is worth it." The man nodded, reassured by his calm voice. Passengers around them began murmuring, wondering about the delay. A woman with 2 kids looked anxious. A businessman in the middle seat sighed loudly, annoyed by the inconvenience. But Jordan kept his focus on the aircraft outside. A flight attendant walked down the aisle again, checking seatbelts but also glancing toward the window. Jordan noticed the worry in her eyes the moment she walked past him. She tried to hide it with a polite smile, but Jordan saw through it. He gently asked, "Is everything all right?" She paused for a second. "We're just waiting for confirmation from the captain," she said quietly. Her answer didn't match her expression. Jordan nodded, but inside his mind, he knew this situation wasn't simple. Something important was not being addressed. And if the captain was rushing or dismissing concerns, that could create bigger problems. Another minute passed, then another. Then suddenly, the pilot's voice returned. "We're going to do a quick manual inspection before takeoff. Please remain seated." Jordan's eyes widened just slightly. A manual inspection was not routine unless a staff member had reported something. The maintenance crew must have said something serious enough to request it. Yet the captain's tone sounded more irritated than careful. Jordan unbuckled his seatbelt slowly. He didn't stand yet, but he prepared himself. Something inside him whispered that the right moment was coming, when he would need to step forward, not just as a passenger, but as the leader he truly was. He glanced at the businessman in first class again. The man looked annoyed at the delay, shaking his head, unaware of how small this inconvenience was compared to the real issue outside. Jordan sat up straight. His calm expression did not change, but his focus sharpened. He whispered to himself, "Now things will start to show." And within minutes they did. The cabin grew quiet as the passengers waited for the next update. The engines were still silent. The only sound was the soft murmur of people whispering to each other, trying to guess why the plane had not moved. Jordan Harris sat calmly, but his eyes were alert, watching every small detail inside the aircraft and outside the window. He noticed that the maintenance staff had now fully stepped away. This meant the inspection was complete, or at least the part they were allowed to handle. But something still felt unsettled. The pilot had announced a manual inspection, which was unusual unless there was a real concern. Then, 12 minutes after the delay began, the speakers beeped again. A flight attendant touched the wall gently, preparing herself for the announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain said, "we cannot take off yet. We need to wait for an additional manual review. Thank you for your patience." His tone wasn't calm. It was hurried, almost annoyed. The crew exchanged uncertain looks. A few passengers started asking questions. Someone in the back asked loudly, "Is something wrong?" Another person said, "Why is this taking so long?" The Jordan leaned slightly forward, paying attention to the captain's voice. He wasn't just listening, he was analyzing. Leaders in aviation could understand more from tone than words. A minute later, a flight attendant walked down the aisle again. But this time, her steps were slower. When she passed Jordan's seat, her eyes briefly met his. She didn't speak, but Jordan could see a silent question in her expression. a question that said she hoped someone knew what was happening. As she continued down the row, Jordan finally unbuckled his seatbelt. He stood up slowly, with the same calmness he always carried. A few passengers looked at him, wondering if he was going to complain. But Jordan didn't look frustrated at all. He walked toward the front of the cabin. The businessman in first class, the same man who had denied Jordan his seat earlier, noticed him approaching. His eyebrows tightened with irritation. Now what does he want? He muttered under his breath, but Jordan didn't look at him. Instead, he approached one of the flight attendants standing near the front curtain. She looked surprised to see him standing there. "Sir, please remain seated," she said politely. "We're still." Jordan spoke gently, not raising his voice. "I understand, but I need to speak to the captain." The attendant blinked, confused. "To the captain," she repeated softly. Jordan nodded with calm confidence. "Yes, it's important." The attendant hesitated. Normally, passengers were not allowed to speak to the captain, especially not during delays. But something in Jordan's expression made her pause. He did not look demanding. He did not look angry. He looked like someone who understood this situation more than anyone else in the cabin. "Well, we aren't allowed to let passengers speak to the captain during this time," she said carefully. Jordan reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. He did not move fast. He moved with slow, respectful grace. He pulled out a small black leather card holder and opened it gently. Inside was a card that only a few people in the entire aviation industry ever carried. He held it out for the attendant to see. Her eyes widened instantly. She looked at him, then at the card, then back at him. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear but from shock. "Sir, one moment," she whispered quickly. She disappeared behind the curtain toward the cockpit. The businessman in first class craned his neck to see what was happening, but couldn't catch a clear view. He sighed, annoyed that someone from economy was suddenly at the front. A few seconds later, the attendant returned with a very different expression. "Sir, the captain will speak with you," she said, her voice now respectful and steady. Jordan nodded, thanked her, and stepped behind the curtain. Inside the small space near the cockpit, another attendant stood waiting. She looked slightly nervous, as if she understood that something big was happening. Jordan gave her a reassuring smile. The cockpit door opened. The pilot stepped out, looking unsure. His expression held a mixture of curiosity and irritation, as though he wasn't happy about being asked to speak to a passenger. His uniform was neat, and his posture was confident, but his eyes showed a hint of impatience. "Yes," the pilot said. "Is there an issue?" Jordan met his eyes calmly. "Yes, we need to talk about the inspection outside." The pilot frowned. "I didn't request assistance from a passenger," he said, his tone sharp. Jordan did not argue. Instead, he handed the card to the pilot. The pilot took it impatiently, glanced at it well, and froze for a full 2 seconds. His entire expression changed. The impatience disappeared instantly. His eyes widened with understanding, and his posture straightened. He was now standing in front of someone important, someone with authority far above his own. The pilot swallowed quietly. "Sir, I didn't expect." Jordan spoke softly, not trying to impress anyone. "I believe there is something you have overlooked, and we need to address it before this plane leaves the ground." The pilot opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Behind them, the flight attendants watched with silent shock. Inside the cabin, passengers had no idea what had just happened, but they were about to find out. Because the situation had changed, the pilot stared at the identification card in his hand, and for a moment, the small space outside the cockpit went completely silent. The flight attendants watched with wide eyes, unsure what to say or do. They had never seen a passenger carry a card like that. Most airline employees never even saw one in their entire career. The card was simple, black, and official-looking. It carried a seal that only one type of person could use, someone with the highest level authority in the aviation company. Someone who had permission to inspect, audit, or even stop any aircraft under the company's name. The pilot finally found his voice. "You're Mr. Jordan Harris?" he asked quietly. Jordan nodded with gentle calm. "Yes." Even though his voice was soft, it carried a weight that filled the narrow space. The pilot swallowed and straightened his back, suddenly aware of his tone and attitude from earlier. He had spoken quickly. He had rushed procedures. And now, standing before him was the one person he should have never dismissed. The captain handed the card back with both hands. "Sir, I apologize. I didn't realize." Jordan raised a hand kindly. "No need to apologize. We are all here to ensure safety. That is what matters." His voice was warm, not proud. He didn't speak like someone showing authority. He spoke like someone who respected everyone's role. The flight attendants looked at him differently now. They had sensed something special about him earlier, but now everything made sense. He wasn't just a quiet passenger. He wasn't even just a successful CEO. He was the CEO of the entire airline group, the person whose decisions shaped thousands of flights every single day. "Sir," one attendant whispered, why didn't you tell us earlier?" Jordan smiled gently. "Because I was traveling like any regular passenger. My goal is not to take special treatment. I want to know how customers feel and how our service works." He paused. But now the situation requires me to step forward. The pilot inhaled deeply, embarrassed and unsure what to say next. Sir, the maintenance team reported something, but I believed it wasn't serious. I planned to continue without delay. The Jordan's expression stayed calm, but focused, and that is why I needed to talk to you. He motioned to the small window near the cockpit, where the wing was partially visible. There is a minor structural concern, Jordan explained. Maybe small, maybe harmless. But if ignored, it can become serious during flight. Safety is not something we guess, we confirm. The pilot stared at him, realizing his earlier judgment could have put everyone at risk. Jordan continued, the maintenance team signaled uncertainty. When staff do that, we never ignore it. Experience teaches us that small concerns often hide bigger truths. The pilot lowered his gaze, humbled. You're right, sir. I should have listened more carefully. Jordan nodded gently. We all learn, Captain. But now, we must act properly. He glanced at the flight attendants. Please notify the ground control that a senior safety inspection is happening. It must be recorded. The attendants immediately picked up their communication devices, their hands moving quickly but carefully. They understood the seriousness of the moment. The pilot hesitated before asking, Sir, would you like to enter the cockpit to review the system? Jordan shook his head politely. No, this is your role. Mine is only to ensure the right decisions are followed. Inspect the safety logs again, confirm everything. We will not move this aircraft until we are fully satisfied. Yes, sir, the pilot responded firmly. A moment later, Jordan stepped back through the curtain into the first-class section, not to take a seat, but simply to stand quietly while the crew followed procedure. Every flight attendant greeted him with new respect. Their earlier confusion had turned into admiration, but one person did not understand yet, the businessman in the gray suit. He looked up from his first-class seat with an annoyed sigh. As he's still walking around, can someone please send him back to economy? Some people don't know boundaries. Jordan turned to him politely, offering a calm smile. I'm sorry for any disturbance. We're handling an important matter. The businessman rolled his eyes. Yeah, whatever. Some people love drama. A flight attendant stepped toward the businessman and whispered something in his ear. The color drained from his face instantly. He turned slowly toward Jordan, eyes wide, jaw dropping. You're the CEO, he whispered. Jordan nodded again, still smiling softly. Yes. The businessman froze in his seat, unable to say anything. He slowly leaned back, realizing how wrongly he had judged the man he pushed aside earlier. Not because of who Jordan was, but because of how he had treated someone he didn't know. Jordan did not hold grudges. His voice stayed gentle. It's all right. We all learn lessons at different moments. Then he added kindly, Thank you for your patience during this delay. The businessman lowered his head, too embarrassed to respond. The crew continued their tasks urgently. Ground control was notified. The inspection team moved quickly. The pilot rechecked every detail with new seriousness he had not shown before. Inside the plane, the atmosphere changed. Not because people knew his title, but because Jordan had shown that leadership is not about power. It is about responsibility, and this flight was far from over. The atmosphere inside the aircraft shifted the moment ground control confirmed the message from Mr. Jordan Harris. The flight attendants straightened their uniforms, speaking with more focus. The crew members moved with a quiet urgency. Even passengers sensed that something important was unfolding, though they did not know the details. Jordan returned to the small standing area between first class and the cockpit, watching calmly as the pilot reviewed the inspection logs once more. The captain looked different now, more careful, more thoughtful, and much more aware of every choice he made. He understood that this moment could affect not only the flight but his entire professional path. The pilot stepped out of the cockpit again. Sir, he said respectfully, I've rechecked the logs. The maintenance team noted a vibration during the last landing. I believed it was minor. But after your observation, I think we need to take a deeper look. Jordan nodded softly. Thank you for reconsidering. Aviation safety always begins with listening. The pilot lowered his head. I understand that now. A flight attendant approached with a tablet. Captain Ground Control is asking if they should send the second inspection team. But Jordan spoke before the captain could answer. Yes, we need the second team. They will confirm what the first team noticed. The attendant immediately relayed the message. Inside the cabin, passengers watched anxiously. Some looked out the window trying to see what was happening. Others leaned into the aisle, hoping to catch a conversation. A few people tried to guess the cause. The businessman in first class, the one who took Jordan's seat earlier, sat stiff and quiet. He didn't dare complain anymore. Instead, he kept sneaking nervous glances at Jordan, unsure if he should say something or simply stay silent. Jordan remained calm, offering no sign of anger or discomfort. Minutes later, 2 safety inspectors arrived outside the aircraft. Jordan watched them through the window. They carried special equipment and moved with purpose. They checked the left wing carefully, then the panels under the fuselage. Their faces showed concentration, not panic, just the quiet seriousness of professionals who understood the stakes. One inspector radioed something to the ground crew. Jordan did not say a word, but his eyes softened. He could read their movements. He could see the answer in the way they checked the same spot twice. The pilot approached Jordan slowly. "Sir," he said, "I must ask, how did you see the issue so quickly?" Jordan smiled gently. "Experience, Captain. Many years in this field teach you to notice things others overlook." The pilot nodded. "I admit, when I first heard the maintenance report, I wanted to keep the schedule. I didn't want passengers to wait." Jordan replied kindly, "Schedules are important, but safety is more important. Flights can always be delayed. People cannot be replaced." His words landed with quiet power. The captain took a deep breath. "Thank you for stepping forward. I should have taken the earlier report seriously. Learning is part of leadership," Jordan said quietly. "Today is a lesson for all of us." Suddenly, the intercom on the wall beeped. A flight attendant tapped it, listened carefully, then turned to them both. "Captain," she said, "the second inspection team found something. They need to speak with you immediately." The captain hurried to the cockpit window and communicated through the small radio system. Jordan watched calmly, his face unreadable. A moment later, the captain turned back with a pale expression. "Sir, they found a small structural weakness in the wing panel. Nothing severe yet, but enough that this aircraft cannot take off until it is repaired." And Jordan closed his eyes briefly, not in fear but in gratitude that the truth came out before takeoff. "Good," he said softly. "Now we can protect everyone on board." The pilot looked shaken. "If we had taken off," Jordan interrupted kindly, "we don't think about what could have happened. We only focus on what we can fix now." The captain nodded again, humbled. The flight attendants gathered near Jordan and the pilot. One asked gently, "Sir, what should we tell the passengers?" Jordan spoke with warm leadership. "Tell them the truth in simple words. The plane needs repair for safety, and safety always comes first. They will understand." The attendant smiled, relieved by his supportive tone. When the announcement was made, passengers reacted with mixed emotions, some annoyed, some nervous, some grateful. But most of them understood when the attendant added, "Was stopped the flight because a senior safety authority requested an important inspection." Jordan stepped back to allow the crew to work. He didn't demand attention. He didn't boast. He didn't even tell the passengers who he was. His goal was not praise. It was protection. But the businessman in first class finally stood and approached him slowly. "Sir," he said quietly, voice trembling, I misjudged you earlier, and I'm truly sorry." Jordan smiled warmly. "That's okay. We all make assumptions sometimes. What matters is we learn something from them." The businessman nodded, embarrassed but grateful for the kindness. Outside, the inspectors continued their work. Inside, the pilot prepared paperwork for grounding the aircraft. And in the center of it all stood Jordan, calm, steady, guiding without force. This was leadership not by title, but by character. And the day's biggest decision was still coming. The aircraft now felt like a different world. Moments earlier, passengers believed they were on a routine morning flight. But now they were sitting inside a plane that had just been officially grounded. The flight attendants moved carefully, speaking in low but confident voices. The captain stayed near the cockpit, filling out forms that carried heavy responsibility. And in the middle of it all, Mr. Jordan Harris stood quietly, watching everything unfold with steady calm. Ground control had already confirmed the inspection team's report. The aircraft needed repair before flying. It wasn't a dangerous emergency, the issue was small, but it was important enough to stop the flight. A safe delay is always better than an unsafe liftoff. Jordan listened as the captain received the final confirmation. The pilot's face held gratitude and humility, mixed with a hint of embarrassment. He approached Jordan slowly. "Sir," he began softly, "I want to thank you again. Your attention to detail, it prevented a mistake on my part." Jordan nodded gently. "We all make decisions under pressure. What matters is correcting them when new information comes." The captain looked relieved. "I'll make the official request for a replacement crew and aircraft." Jordan replied, "Good. Passengers must be taken care of. Make sure the service team offers clear communication." The captain handed his clipboard to an attendant and stepped aside. He knew he needed to reflect on this moment. His job was to fly a plane, but today, he had been reminded of something more important. Listening, patience, and humility. Passengers were whispering to each other. Even though they didn't know the full story, they sensed something meaningful had happened. The woman with 2 children sighed with relief. The businessman in the center row adjusted his glasses and muttered, "At least they caught it early." A retired couple nodded, agreeing that safety should always come first. A few people asked the attendants for details, but the attendants answered respectfully without causing worry. "One of our senior safety authorities requested a further inspection," they said. It was the right call. The passengers accepted this explanation. Meanwhile, the businessman who had taken Jordan's first-class seat earlier felt a heavy mix of guilt and respect. He kept replaying the moment when he brushed Jordan off so casually, believing he was someone unimportant. Now, he understood the truth. Jordan was the most important person on this aircraft, not because of power but because he cared. He approached Jordan slowly. "Sir, I don't know how to apologize properly," he said quietly. Jordan smiled kindly. "A sincere apology is enough." The man looked relieved but still ashamed. "I judged you without knowing anything about you." Jordan placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Many people do that in life. What matters is trying to be better next time." The businessman nodded with gratitude. Jordan's calm acceptance felt like a lesson that touched everyone around them. Suddenly, the intercom near the cockpit beeped again. The first officer answered it, then turned to the captain. "Headquarters is requesting confirmation," he said. "They want to know who initiated the safety hold." The captain breathed in, then answered proudly, "Mr. Jordan Harris." The officer blinked. "The CEO?" "Yes," the captain replied. Jordan remained quiet at the edge of the aisle. He wasn't seeking attention. The crew, however, stood taller now. They felt the weight of the moment. The highest authority in the company had been on their flight, and they didn't even know it at first. Headquarters sent one more message. "Follow Mr. Harris's guidance entirely. Cooperation from all staff is required." The captain nodded respectfully. He turned to Jordan. "Sir, they are ready for any instruction you give." Jordan raised a hand gently. "You're the captain. Your team follows you. My role is only to ensure safety." His humility surprised everyone again. Ground control informed them that a replacement pilot and crew were already on their way. Since the aircraft needed repair and could not be used today, the passengers would be moved to another plane. The captain looked at Jordan. "Sir, would you like me to escort you to the new aircraft personally?" Jordan shook his head. "No need. Treat me like any other passenger." The captain smiled weakly. "But you are not." Jordan interrupted kindly. "Today I am. Leadership is not about privilege. It's about responsibility." The captain felt those words deeply. A flight attendant approached Jordan with a soft voice. "Sir, headquarters also apologized for the seat mix-up. They said it was caused by a system error." Jordan nodded. "Thank you. Mistakes happen. As long as we handle them with honesty and kindness, everything is fine." The attendant smiled, feeling comforted. Passengers began standing, gathering their things. The businessman in first class stepped aside to allow others to pass, offering small, polite gestures, something he rarely did before. Jordan waited until most passengers had moved. He always believed in giving space to others first. As he stood, the captain approached one last time. "Sir, may I ask one question?" Jordan smiled. "Of course. What made you stand up earlier? You could have stayed seated and said nothing." Jordan looked out the window where the inspectors were still working on the wing. Then he answered softly, "Because when something doesn't feel right, real leaders step forward. Not to be seen, but to protect others." The captain closed his eyes briefly, moved by the simple truth, and with that the decision was complete. The plane was grounded. A new journey was prepared, and every person on board had witnessed what true leadership looked like. Passengers slowly began leaving the aircraft, guided gently by the flight attendants. Even though the delay was long and the situation unexpected, most people felt strangely calm. They knew something had been prevented, something that might have caused worry later if not caught now. And in the center of it all was the quiet man who had said almost nothing about himself, yet changed everything. Mr. Jordan Harris waited until everyone else stepped out. He always believed that true leadership meant going last. When he finally stood up, he carefully lifted his small black bag, checked the seat one last time to be sure he left nothing behind, and then walked toward the exit. As he reached the door, the flight attendants stood in a line, each offering him a respectful nod. "Thank you, sir," one whispered. "Your calm made everything easier," said another. Jordan smiled warmly. "You all handled it very well. Remember, safety is teamwork." The attendants exchanged proud glances. They knew they had learned something meaningful that day, something they would carry into every future flight. Once Jordan stepped back into the gate area, he saw passengers standing around, some sitting, some stretching their legs, all waiting for instructions. The large digital screen now displayed, "Flight delayed, replacement aircraft arriving." A mother with young kids approached him first. "Sir, thank you," she said softly. "I didn't know what happened, but I feel safer because someone was watching." Jordan gently nodded. "Your children deserve a safe journey. That is what matters most." Another man stepped forward, the one from economy who had whispered earlier, sensing something was wrong. "I knew you had experience," he said with a small smile, "but I didn't know you were that experienced." The Jordan laughed lightly. "I just do my best where I'm needed." One by one, people approached him, not to ask for selfies or praise, but simply to express gratitude. They respected him not because of his title, but because of how he carried himself, calm, steady, and humble. But then came the moment that everyone had quietly been waiting for, the businessman from first class. He walked slowly, as if unsure whether he even deserved to speak. When he finally reached Jordan, he took a deep breath. "Mr. Harris, I owe you more than an apology," he said in a soft, trembling voice. "I treated you with disrespect. I made assumptions. I thought I knew who belonged near me and who didn't. And I was wrong, very wrong. Jordan looked at him with kind, patient eyes. "We all make mistakes," he said gently. "What matters is that you learned something from today." The man nodded, emotional. "I did. I learned that respect should never depend on what someone looks like or where they sit. Thank you for showing me that without anger." Jordan smiled. "Anger only makes walls. Kindness builds doors." The businessman swallowed hard, touched by the simplicity and truth in the words. Before Jordan could step away, a staff member approached him. "Sir, headquarters is on the line. They want to offer support for anything you need." Jordan chuckled softly. "I only need one thing. Make sure the passengers reach their destination safely." The staff member nodded with admiration. "We will, sir." Jordan thanked him and turned back toward the passengers. Many of them were now seated calmly, waiting for the next flight. The delay did not bother them anymore. They felt protected. They felt seen. While waiting for the replacement plane, Jordan walked toward the window overlooking the runway. He watched as the grounded aircraft was surrounded by engineers and technicians. The small structural issue would be fixed within hours, but the lesson from that day would last far longer. Jordan thought about the pilot, the flight attendants, the maintenance workers, and the passengers. Everyone had experienced something together, something that connected them in a way no one expected. He whispered to himself, "Sometimes delays save lives. Sometimes mistakes teach wisdom." His reflection was interrupted when a small girl tugged his sleeve. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. "Are you the man who made the plane stop?" she asked in innocent curiosity. Jordan bent down to her level. "Yes, for safety." She smiled brightly. "My mom said you are a hero." Jordan shook his head gently. "Heroes are people who care about others. That includes you too." The girl giggled and ran back to her mother, who mouthed "thank you" from a distance. Jordan felt his heart warm. Moments like these were worth more than any title or boardroom meeting. When the announcement finally came that the replacement aircraft was ready, the passengers lined up again. This time, no one pushed or complained. There was a sense of respect floating in the air. The businessman from first class stepped aside and gestured for Jordan to go ahead of him. Jordan thanked him politely but stayed in line with everyone else. As he handed his boarding pass to the agent, she smiled and said, "Have a safe flight, Mr. Harris, and thank you for today." The Jordan nodded. "We all made it safe together. That is the real success." He walked down the jet bridge, calm as always. Before entering the new plane, Jordan glanced back at the passengers behind him. Many smiled, some waved, and others simply nodded with gratitude. He smiled softly and whispered to himself, "Respect people because of who they are, not who you assume they are. You never know who might save your day, or your life." And with that, Jordan boarded the new aircraft, carrying with him the quiet strength of a leader who changed a moment simply by caring.